Welcome to the Porn Reboot podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Amazi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode. Today, I'd like to talk about how viewing pornography rewires your brain to basically the brain of a teenager or a juvenile. This is very important because too often men just feel that the impact of pornography on their life is what is apparent to them. Porn-induced erectile dysfunction, brain fog, some depression, some lack of focus. Yeah, those things happen, but you are often unaware of what is actually happening to you psychologically. The neurological impact of your porn use is greatly altering your brain function and your brain structure, and there are a lot of psychological and behavioral consequences. And I'd like to just quickly talk about a few of them to really emphasize the destructive impact of pornography on your life. The first is erosion of your prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is the brain region responsible for executive function. You will hear me talk about it a lot. Impulse control, decision making, even your morality. It erodes it. It degrades this part of your brain, and this can lead to behaviors that you would often see in teenagers. When you see a teenager engaging in just bad decision making, you're like, why would they speed? Why would they drink that? Why would they overdo it with this thing? Why would they not do more research before they gave money to that person, or before they took on that job, or before they worked with that person? It's literally because your prefrontal cortex has eroded. You are taking yourself back to the point when you were a teenager. And I have seen this behavior in grown men. It is crazy to see a man in his 30s and 40s just acting like a teenager. I'm not saying that he dresses like a teenager. I'm not saying that he looks like a teenager. I'm just saying that emotionally, and when it comes to decision making, he's acting like a teenager, especially when a man is sitting in front of one of our Reboot strategists. So he's seeking help for his behavior. But it's crazy to see a guy who you just look at him, you're like, oh, well, he looks like a put together middle-aged man. But why is he just lying in such a simple way? It's so obvious that he's lying. Like, it's so obvious that his behavior is borderline childish. And at first, when I first started doing this, I thought it was funny. I'll be honest with you, I just thought it was laughable that some people were acting that way. But I came to realize that I used to act that way when I was in my early 20s. And I would remember how women and some of my friends would tell me that I was so immature. And it wasn't just that men's brains don't fully rewire till we are 25, 26 years old, but it was also because I was consuming pornography on a daily basis. And this same thing happens to men, grown men. My God. I will go as far as to say that the phenomenon of a lot of adult men today playing video games, acting basically like overgrown boys, has a lot to do with this erosion of the prefrontal cortex due to pornography use. And one day, it is going to be widely known that this is a problem. A lot of things like the impact of smartphones on our brain, the impact of cigarettes, even things that are still being debated today, like the impact of milk, like the dairy industry, and how milk is not as healthy as everybody has been influenced to believe. And I believe that one day we're going to find out that what we have considered to be just casual pornography use is actually something that is robbing us of some of the best years of our life. The second impact of pornography on your brain, as it relates to taking you back to a more juvenile state, is the desensitization of your dopamine reward system. When you are addicted to pornography, it leads to unnaturally high levels of dopamine release. So, what happens is that you overstimulate your brain's reward system. And over time, your reward system becomes desensitized. So, basically, you are less responsive to any natural source of pleasure. It not only leads to one of the most obvious issues, which is porn induced erectile dysfunction, because you're not aroused by your partner anymore, but you're just not able to enjoy life anymore. Like life is just not something you can do. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of men who are going through the reboot process, once you've set boundaries with pornography and you've removed yourself from pornography, you often find yourself running to your phone to browse. You find yourself doom scrolling on Instagram or on Twitter or the news. It's not because you are addicted to any of these things. It's simply because your reward system has been rewired to need that level of stimuli. So you will constantly seek it. If it's not in pornography, you'll find it somewhere else. The next is, well, we talked about PIED, but let's go slightly deeper into it. You develop a lot of sexual dysfunction and you begin to have relationship issues. Now, having coached men for 13 years, I will tell you that it is a fact, even though now there are so many studies to back it up, that being addicted to pornography leads to sexual dysfunction, it leads to erectile dysfunction, and an inability to achieve orgasms with another human being, which is crazy. It's not just that you have PIED, it's that you can't even have an orgasm with another human being. You completely lose that ability. And, we don't want to talk about it. The problem is when you're in a relationship or when you're married and you cannot have an orgasm with your partner, it is so easy to sweep it under the rug. It is so easy to go to a urologist, to look up all the different reasons why it might happen. You go get Cialis, get Viagra, get everything, and you still can't orgasm with your partner. It is going to destroy your marriage. It destroys it not because you're unable to have an orgasm, but because of the shame, because you can just pretend like it doesn't exist. It is so challenging to reverse engineer it and to accept the reality that it's because of pornography. Accept that you prefer pornography over real life intimacy. Let me tell you, every single time that you view pornography, you are putting your marriage at risk. Even if it is one time. I know there are some of you who stay off pornography for many months, and then you use pornography once or twice, and then you notice that it doesn't have an impact on intimacy. But understand that once or twice that you do it is still release of high levels of dopamine. It's still overstimulating your brain's reward system, which means that your brain is still going to remember it. Even if it is a couple of weeks later, your brain goes like, whoa, remember that time 2 months ago when you viewed porn and how good it felt? You still have the neural pathway that was activated. There is a memory of it. The risk of you relapsing will always be there. The risk to your marriage is still there, gentlemen. Those of you who have done the work to stay away from pornography long enough to start having orgasms with your partner, please, if you're starting to slowly go back to it, I urge you to just stay away. It is not worth it. It is not normal to not be sexually attracted to your partner. It is not normal to not be able to orgasm with your partner. The next is you begin to escalate your behavior to more extreme content. So as you become desensitized to just regular pornographic material, as you already know, and if you don't, you begin to seek out more extreme sorts of content, more taboo content, more unconventional content to get to the same level of arousal. And this is basically driven by the need for stronger stimuli so that you can wake up your desensitized reward system. Oh man, gentlemen, this is just a horrible place to be. In a couple of days, I'm going to be releasing a podcast episode on HOCD, or homosexual obsessive compulsive disorder. And we're going to talk about how men escalate all the way to viewing transgender pornography. In fact, it's so crazy because this is just normalized now. It's normalized for so many young teenagers to just accept and say like, oh yeah, I'm probably bisexual. Oh yeah, I'm into sissies or trannies or she-males or whatever they're called, ladyboys. I'm into that. And you see it being proliferated on TikTok and Instagram, but it is not normal. A lot of it is driven by pornography. And these young people from the age of 11, 12, 13, the moment they're able to masturbate, before they're even able to masturbate, before they hit puberty, they're on TikTok, they're online being exposed to all these things. Not just the pornography, but the normalization. Other kids just joking about being gay or joking about being into transgender individuals or cross-dressing individuals. And so the moment they hit puberty, it is normalized. Many of us did not grow up this way. Many of us grew up in societies where it was taboo, or some of us were fortunate to grow up in homes where it was acceptable to be gay or whatever you were, but it was not acceptable to openly joke about it. It was definitely not normalized. And so when we started viewing pornography, there was that natural boundary, but now it doesn't exist. These kids are going in a matter of months from 0 to 100. The sort of escalation that would have taken the regular listener of this podcast years to get to, kids are getting there. I say kids, I mean teenagers are getting there in a very short period of time. I think you should consider yourself fortunate to even have access to a podcast like this, to have access to education, to have the knowledge that you can rewire your brain from this. A lot of these teenagers have no idea that what they're going through is not natural. They actually think that it's a normal cultural thing. They actually think that this is what puberty is about. And the final piece of this is that there is a link to increased sexual violence. We see this in young people today. And if you are an individual who is addicted to pornography, it is definitely going to start showing up in your sexual behavior as well. I remember when I first started watching pornography when I was about 13, 14 years old on VSH tapes, it had like a soundtrack to it. It had music, it had a plot, it had all of that. After that, it just quickly devolved to everything being violent, absolutely violent. I've said that the parts of our brains that are activated when we view pornography are also the parts of our brains that process violence. So consumption of violence, particularly violent pornographic content, influences real life behaviors through the activation of what we call mirror neurons. So basically, mirror neurons imitate observed actions. So when you view pornography, you have a tendency to act out what you see when you're having sex. You'll see a lot of people saying like, oh yeah, pornography taught me how to have sex. I wouldn't know where to put my penis. I wouldn't know where a vagina was if not for pornography. I did not learn that in biology class. That's fine, but you also learned about certain positions. You learned about choking or pulling hair. Nothing wrong with those things. There are people who are into that, but this behavior just continued. There are a lot of women who are not into blowjobs, but through pornography, they thought it was normal. And because every guy started going for blowjobs or wanting to have them, they assumed it was normal. There were a lot of women who did not know that a guy coming on your face is not a normal thing. That is straight out of pornography. But they're like, well, yeah, like, sure, let's do it. And then, of course, the other unhealthy things like going from anal sex to vaginal sex just leads to a lot of health issues. But again, people view that in pornography and they think it's absolutely normal to do, which is crazy. There is a connection between viewing violent pornography and an increase in sexually aggressive behavior and sexual violence. These are things that are not spoken about often enough, but I work with enough men one-on-one. I receive hundreds and hundreds of emails and interactions with men online through our YouTube channel, through all our emails, through everything. And we know that you are harboring very violent sexual fantasies, rough sex, rape-themed sex, bondage, gore, all kinds of crazy things. You know what you're into. But one thing I want you to understand is that A lot of this is mirrored from pornography. Throughout our history, there has always been violence, there's always been rape, but it has escalated over the years. Man, even as I talk about this, there's still so many topics I want to talk about. Pedophilia and how extensive it has become. It has become a plague. Again, a few years after I started coaching men to freedom from pornography, I started noticing as there was an increase in homosexual obsessive compulsive disorder, there was also an increase in men who are watching, I don't call it child pornography, I call it images and videos of children being sexually abused. Whether it was via hentai or men looking for it online, there are so many men viewing this. I know for a fact that some of you who are listening to this podcast view that sort of material. And I want to tell you that there is nothing normal about it. I'm also saying this from a scientific point of view. There is nothing normal about that. And there are more and more people engaging in it. It is problematic. You do not want to be caught doing that. You do not want to have that in your mind. The consequences of it are some of the worst consequences a man can face in his life, engaging in that. And I will expand on it later on. But that is also connected to sexual aggression and sexual violence. So much more I can say, but the entire point of this was just to remind you of the way that pornography rewires your brain. Quick summary. First of all, pornography rewires your brain to a much more juvenile state. You might be wondering, well, JK, you talked about all the negative impact of pornography. What's the point? The point of all of this is, even though you are hearing me say all of this, you're still going back to view pornography. Think of this. I've explained all the dangers of this, yet it is likely that you will still go back a week from now and view pornography, knowing that it is a choice, knowing that some of the things I mentioned are dangerous, knowing that these things are going to hurt you, and you're still right before the moment of viewing it, when you are still aware that you're about to do it, you will remember all of these things and you will still say, fuck it, I'm going to do it. That is exactly what a teenager would do. A teenager would understand the risk and they would go, fuck it. Why? Because their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. Because your prefrontal cortex has been eroded. You do not have the neural pathways within the gray matter anymore, because one of the biggest impacts of pornography is that it takes that away. No impulse control. The ability to make decisions fast is gone. Your morality is out the window. You are not a moral human being if you are watching rape-themed pornography or images of children being abused or people being hurt when you are in an aroused state, because you are purposefully getting into an aroused state in order to have an orgasm to this type of material. It is no different from a man picking up a bottle of alcohol and choosing to get drunk because he knows that by getting drunk, he is going to be able to engage in behavior that is immoral because he's removing his ability to make a choice. You do the same thing when you do not set up boundaries around your behavior with pornography. It is exactly the same thing. You desensitize your dopamine reward system, you develop sexual dysfunction and relationship issues, you escalate to much more extreme content, and you increase the chances that you will engage in some sort of sexual violence in your life. I don't give a damn what sort of values or standards you claim to have. As a man thinketh, so he is, says James Allen in his book. What you think will eventually be manifested in your life. It may not be now, it may not be next year, but it is going to show up somewhere, sometime, and you will be shocked. Oh my God, I can't believe I did that thing. I see it in men. 13 years doing this, I see it happen all the time. My brother, please, please, please do not wait any longer. If you have been listening to this podcast, if you have been vacillating back and forth. Should I get help? Should I not get help? Can I afford it? Can I not afford it? I'm just going to say that you cannot afford to wait. If you can relate to everything that I have said in this podcast today, and you are not within our program, or you're the exact person I'm talking to, you're a person whose brain has reverted to a juvenile state. You may be a grown-ass man sitting there driving your car, whatever it is you think you're doing, but you are no different when it comes down to it, to decision-making and impulse from a teenager. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out-of-control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is, if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is, if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.